The sales process is not a single thing. There's not one sales process. There are multiple divisions of the sales process, because what is going on in the overall sales process, the very beginning of the sales process is where you and I try to figure out, can I trust you? That happens in the first 4 minutes, okay? If I can trust you, then do I believe that you can solve my problem? Well, I can't believe that you can solve my problem until I'm convinced that you understand my problem. Mm-hmm. So the more I uncover your problem, the more you're going to trust that I can solve it. The product becomes irrelevant.
We could debate about this for a really long time. Welcome to today's episode of Influence by Design. I'm your host for today, Samantha Riley, and today we are diving into the world of sales. As any of my clients know, I think every single training I do, one of the things I mention is sales are the lifeblood of your business. It is such an important topic to cover and to work around. So today, John Lester has come onto the show to chat with us about sales. So welcome, John. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Samantha. It's good to be here. Let's have some fun with this one.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. Let's start off. What made you get into sales? What drew you to this topic?
This insanity, which a lot of people will relate to.
Everything about business is insanity.
It's total insanity. It's a very simple, a very short story. I was working as a hardware technician, a repair technician. And we're not going to get into, the state of computers at the time, but, we used to go fix these things, take boards out, solder them, do all this kind of stuff. And the company that was a very small company in New Jersey, and we were a division of a Canadian company. So we had a little bit of funding. So we weren't under a whole lot of pressure. And one day, the head of the company, the owner of the company, came in. He said, "Look, I got good news and I got news." I said, "Well, cool. Talk to me." He said, "Well, the good news is the Canadian parent has decided they don't want us anymore." I said, "Why is that good news?" He says, "Because now we can do pretty much whatever we want. We have no restrictions." Right? Before we were a single product company. I said, "Okay, so then what's the other news?" He said, "Well, the other news is, there's only 6 of us in the whole company, and I don't need a repair technician if we don't have sales. So the product, the customers, they like you. Here's the options. You can become the salesperson, or we can say goodbye." I go, "That's kind of abrupt." There was none of this notion of, here's severance, here's none of that stuff, especially in small companies. And I said, what's the worst that can happen? I said, "I'll give it a try." Now, the biggest problem was he was right. I did know the customers. He's right. I did know the product because I had the technical background. But the problem was I was successful in the beginning. And that creates a false sense of security. But that's how I got into it. And what happens to all of us is we are like machines that once you start to roll, we want to keep rolling in the same direction. We never want to change. And as a salesperson, as anybody who's in sales knows, the biggest thing we do for ourselves is we lie to ourselves. That's what we do. And that's just as humans. So I said, well, it's going to keep getting better. It's going to keep getting better. Well, eventually it did. Eventually it got very good.
But I'm guessing there was a bit of a gap in the middle there.
I walked into it. I had no idea what I knew. I had no idea what I didn't know. I had never been trained. I'd never even read a sales book at that point. I didn't even understand what the game was about for a number of years. So I was all self-taught, found out how to learn things, found out where to go for things, and then started trying things out. And that's where I came up with my own theories based upon my own real experiences.
I love this so much.
Everything I talk about, I have done and tried and failed at and succeeded at. So it's...
I believe that those things that we try and fail at, we learn so much more from things that work because we remember them and they have, we have a visceral reaction to those things. We remember them. That can also be our biggest downfall, right? Because we do have that visceral reaction to them. So it's quite an interesting place to be. But essentially, having those failures are best learnings.
Yeah. And when you finally learn that you're not going to die from it, you pick yourself up and you keep going.
What were some of those initial failures that you had or learnings that you had that maybe are a little bit of you have a different thought about now?
And I'm not even going to say initial, I was going to say in general.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the thinking, a lot of the training that's been done, and primarily has been rooted in, and again, I'm talking about United States right now because I don't know the thinking that occurred in Europe and Asia, but in the United States, so much of the United States psyche was formed by the military operations of the Second World War.
Mm-hmm.
It was all about how do I get from point A to point B? How do I specialize? How do I segment? And it was called, the technical term for it is called command and control.
Mm-hmm.
And so sales was taught from a command and control perspective. Go do this, build rapport, get the client to say yes 6 times, and then they'll say yes to anything. All of these notions, all of these tricks and hacks, because if you think about it, sales back then was not about providing a solution to a customer. Sales back then was withholding information from the customer and tricking them into making a decision.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that anymore.
No.
The prospect knows more about what you have to offer than you do. Most salespeople are grossly unequipped to walk into a prospect meeting because the
Mm-hmm.
prospect has done more research than they have done.
Interesting.
But that's the way it was back then. We could make up manuals. We could withhold manuals. People would say, send me something. We could send them we could do whatever we wanted back then.
Mm-hmm.
And the customer realistically had no recourse. And it's not the greatest way to live, but you know what? That was the style at the time. And I don't care who you worked for, right? That's just the way it was.
But it's different now, right? People's BS radars are turned up so high. They're so highly tuned.
Yeah.
Tell us.
One of the other, yeah, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I want to follow your little breadcrumbs there.
So, and this is something that I think very few people understand. Most people get wrong. And it's what I call the law of substitution. So when a lot of people sell, they always say, all right, I have this pen to sell. Okay, we'll use that just as a proxy. And so they will say, and their manager will say, well, if your prospect is looking to buy that pen, who else are they looking at? And you might say, well, they're looking at, this pen guy, and then they're looking at this pen guy. And so you'll say, okay, so that's the competition. I'm trying to sell this. The competition is these 2 pens. Yes, so let's devise a strategy around those 2 pens. It's a product-focused strategy because I'm selling the pen. And what they don't understand, and they're starting to understand more, is the prospect is not looking to buy a pen. They are looking to solve a problem. And maybe the problem has nothing to do with the pen. Maybe the problem has to do with an emotional need. Maybe the problem has to do with something that's going on in their head. So the substitution law then comes into effect. Maybe as opposed to buying the pen, they can solve the same emotional need or the same inner need by buying a bottle of Diet Coke. But if you've done all of your strategizing around the fact that you're selling a product and there are 3 pens, you completely missed the significance of understanding what the buyer is really trying to accomplish. Because the reality is, so many buyers don't really understand the problem they're trying to solve. And they express that problem. The most common way they express the problem is price. They're not buying price. They're trying to solve a problem. People just don't get it.
So what you're saying is we're selling something that is completely invisible. We're selling that story that's going on in their head. What are some of the starting points? Because this can be really tricky to understand what's going on in people's heads. It can be a tricky place to start.
Yes.
The way that I talk about it to my clients is like seeing things through the eyes of of your prospect. What tips can you give? Because this is so valuable to be able to understand this. This can make or break a business, right? So
completely.
What tips? Even that sounds so shallow, but what can you talk to about that topic?
So, and I try to school my business clients as well as my individual clients on this. You have to stop thinking about what do I sell. You have to stop. You just have to stop. And I can't say it any other way. When the client doesn't buy the pen, you deliver the pen. but they didn't buy the pen. All right. You don't walk into a really nice restaurant because you want a steak. You walk into a really nice restaurant because you're looking to celebrate something. You're looking for ambience. There's so many emotional reasons that you go into a steakhouse. Okay. I mean, I've spent over $500 a person on dinners, and I can't tell you what I had, but I can tell you the experience from the time I walked in through the entire 3-hour dinner all the way to the end. I can tell you how I felt.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I carry with me. I don't remember what I was served. So when somebody is looking to have an interaction with a buyer, they have to really start to be comfortable with asking the buyer, what is it that you're trying to solve? Why are we talking? What do I represent to you? What problem are you trying to solve? And then when the person starts to speak about that problem, not immediately go into, oh, I can solve that problem for you. No, take the extra time. Why is that problem important to you? There's a notion out there, and I don't know who has written about it. It's called the 7 whys.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that important to you? And then when they divulge that piece, why is that important to you? And then and I use that a lot. I've never gotten past 5 whys before I got to the core issue, but it was never at the first 3.
Mm.
So it comes in usually 4 or 5. And it is almost always emotional. And it is oftentimes, if you really want to go 1 or 2 more layers down, it is about something that happened to them prior to their being 6 or 7 years old. That's what's so weird about it. Their needs. We try to satisfy needs. But if you don't start to at least understand that, you're not relating to the individual as a human. How would they ever trust you with their problem to solve? So they're going to dance around. Well, I got to do a demo. Well, I've got to, price. Well, we're looking at, those aren't the issues. Those aren't the issues. Now, the interesting thing, this is no different than life. This is no different than the disputes and the arguments and the screaming matches we have with our spouses. It's not about me taking out the garbage. Right? It's about respect. It's about listening to it's about all those different things. So why aren't we doing the same thing with our prospects? Why aren't we treating them like human beings?
I talk a lot about context, and what you were just talking about there, I just had a really interesting thought. When you're asking that why and you're going down and you're going down and you're getting really to that root, I almost feel like when the customer understands that's why, they will even interact with your product in a different way. And I've never really thought about that before. But what came to me as you were saying that is that as a service provider, because as coaches and consultants, experts, we're selling something that's invisible. We're not selling a product. We're not selling a pen. And that by our customers understanding that's why I'm interacting with this product, they're going to get so much value out of the actual product itself. And I've never had that
I
thought
would
before.
actually counter that and say that's not necessarily true. And I wouldn't go there with that one. I understand what you're saying, but I here's kind of what happens. And this is again where I look at this very, very differently. The sales process is not a single thing. There's not one sales process. There are multiple divisions of the sales process, because what is going on in the overall sales process, what starts at the sales process, and then a lot of has been written about this, the very beginning of the sales process is where you and I try to figure out, can I trust you? That happens in the first 4 minutes. Okay. If I can trust you, then do I believe that you can solve my problem? Well, I can't believe that you can solve my problem until I'm convinced that you understand my problem. So the more I uncover your problem, the more you're going to trust that I can solve it. Product becomes irrelevant.
We could debate about this for a really long time.
I know. And I'm not saying that it's true in every single case. What I'm saying is, at least consider that. If you're a seller, consider that might be a possibility in your world. Consider that might be the way your prospect is interacting with you.
Something I'm noticing is that sales are getting harder. Why is this? I mean, you've talked a little bit about the BS radars of prospects, But can we dive deeper into this so that people really can take away some different ways of thinking about sales?
Yeah. I would say there are a number of factors, and I'm not going to hit all of them, and they're not going to be the same for everybody. One of them is because we keep trying to sell the product.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is, especially if you're employed, and I'm not talking about solos, but if you're employed by somebody, remember, salespeople get hired because management of the organization has said, I need X number of dollars to run my operation. I need it to pay payroll. I need it for research and development, for cost of goods sold, whatever the case might be, whatever kind of business. So if they say to you, I need you to sell $1 million a year for me, they're saying that because they need that $1 million to fund the operation and to pay for other people's salaries. All right. And so, of course, they're going to put pressure on you.
Mm-hmm.
That's normal when you're in sales because they need that million. I tell you something, the second you make the million for them, they're not putting pressure on you anymore because now you're a
Mm.
valuable asset. You want to know the fastest way to get out of pressure from your boss? Meet your quota.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Right.
Meet your quota.
It's not that hard, is
I mean, I,
it?
I mean, they'll do anything for you at that point. So you've got that dynamic. You've got another dynamic that again, in the States primarily, and because I can't speak for anybody else, because of what's been happening in the economy, especially since COVID, everybody is scared to make decisions. Everybody is second guessing. I mean, look at our dear friend Elon Musk.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday, drops the 500 people that are working in his charging division. Boom, you're gone.
Mm.
Right? What have we done? We've done something like 275,000 layoffs in the tech sector in the United States in the past 18 months.
It's a
These are
lot.
people that in the history of the United States have never been laid off, have never been laid off. A good percentage of them will never get a job in their field again. People are scared to death to make decisions right now.
Mm.
And then, as I said, if people don't truly understand what they want, if they don't truly understand what they're trying to accomplish, they're going to get confused as they try to make decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't understand what they want, the messaging that they're getting back from the salespeople is doing nothing but confusing them. And
Mm-hmm.
salespeople are very good at sending out confusing messaging. It's one of the skills that you learn because you want to use it. And yeah, people are going to go, oh, I can't believe he said that. He's so heartless. He's not conscious. No, I'm talking about reality. I'm not making a value judgment. I'm talking about how people are. So
Love
yeah,
it.
people need to do a little bit of a reset. Take a deep breath.
Mm.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, the small businesses I work with, I say, and it was amazing. I was on a few weeks ago. I was doing a mini webinar, and I had three people on that were high priced corporate people, 25 and 30 years of experience. I mean, these are deep six-figure people
Mm-hmm.
that have either thrown out or they see the handwriting on the wall. They're getting out. They're trying to hang up their own shingle, and these are extremely bright people. Right? This is like HR, leadership development, things of that nature. I said, fine, could we go around the room and could you please tell me your value proposition? Every single one of them told me what they sold.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't even understand the difference and they were wondering why they weren't resonating with people. How do you hope to distinguish yourself?
But this is what we've been taught, right? This is what we've been
Correct.
taught. And
Correct.
so there needs to be this change. And as humans, change is one of the hardest things that we can come up against. What are some of
Correct.
the thought processes or some of the, what's the word I'm thinking of? I guess some of the deep dives that we need to go through to start to understand the difference for ourselves and our businesses.
So I'll give you one example that hopefully will make it easy for people. Many years ago, tobacco was king in this country. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
smoked. I started smoking at 16. We just did. It wasn't even what you thought about. If you could sneak out of the house and get your hands on a pack of cigarettes, your parents didn't know you were smoking at 15. You were smoking at 16. All right. And if you went to Times Square in New York City, everybody knows Times Square in New York City, there were billboards of sports figures smoking and puffing and blowing smoke rings out of the hole in the billboard. Sports figures were promoting cigarettes. All right. Well, research has shown that that's quite not the way to do things anymore. Research has
Mm.
shown that it's a problem. Research has shown many things are a problem. Hey, sales research has shown that things are different. You've got to understand that things change. You've got to understand that one of the benefits of technology is we know so much more about human decision making than we ever did before, ever. And you've got to understand that what's in your head are mental models that were potentially formed or beginning to be formed while you were still in your mother's womb. So don't be scared about getting rid of them. Understand that it's a normal process. You don't act today the way you did as a 10-year-old.
Mm.
You don't. What's the big deal? Accept the fact that change is important. That's the first thing you have to do. Then you have to start questioning what you're doing, questioning it at a much deeper level than you've ever questioned it before. Understand that most people that are out there peddling something, selling something, are in business to make money, period.
Mm-hmm. Well,
They
business
don't
wouldn't
care if it's right or
exist.
wrong.
Business would not
But I'm saying
exist if we weren't making money.
they're not doing it. Yeah, but they're not doing it from a moral perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to break the news to folks, but not everybody is moral. It's just a reality. Okay. So you got to start making decisions for yourself. You got to understand what's going on in your world and then make decisions as to what you're willing to put up with or not. I almost, Samantha, I almost guarantee you that if you put 100 random people in a room and ask them to write down their top 5 values in life, that probably only 5 of them could do it.
I feel like, and the audience for this podcast is predominantly coaches. I actually feel that that number would be a lot higher because
Okay.
this audience is coaches, and that is something that as a coach we get very clear on what our values are, why we're doing that. So I do feel it's a little bit different to a salesperson for a corporate organization.
Right.
But going into that, how can people use their values in the way that, because they generally do know that. How will that change their sales system?
There's a couple of notions that I really like. One of them is called a red velvet rope policy.
I've heard Michael Port talk about this.
Yeah, Michael Port. That's where I got it, from Michael Port. Yeah,
He's such
and
a cool dude.
It's a great concept because what it says is not only who do I want my customer to be, but it forces you to ask again. It forces you to start doing the 7 whys. Why is that important to you? So what kind of person or business would I ideally want to work with? And you can start to see that the choices become just huge. Do I want to work with somebody who's socially conscious? Do I want to work with somebody who's environmentally conscious? What kind of causes or what kind of perspective do I want the person to have? Down to simple things like, do I want to work with somebody that has a 90-day payment policy versus a 30-day policy versus a 20% deposit policy? Do I want to talk to somebody who's going to negotiate contracts till the cows come home? And you start to look at all of these things and you start to say, here's my people. Now, if you're walking in and you're expressing the kind of person that you want to walk with, you're going to self-select a lot of people right away. But the people that you're trying to get to are going to appreciate and they're going to recognize the fact that you have those values. So you're going to have a smaller population, but you're going to be able to find those people faster and easier. You're going to be able to create opportunities with them easier. And if you do it right and you turn them into raving fans, which is the second concept that I really like to use a lot, they're going to buy more from you and become your reference point. And this is easy, but it's very important for the coaches and the consultants. It's very hard when you're working for somebody to be that selective. Because again, the only reason the salesperson is working for an organization is to produce the revenue. And if they think that what the person is doing is not going to produce revenue as fast as they want it to, they're going to lean on that person. The only way you get out from that is you produce revenue faster. And I've done that. I've produced revenue faster for organizations. And that allowed me to control which customers I dealt with and which customers I didn't deal with. Because as long as I was producing revenue, nobody could say anything to me.
I love that.
It was a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
But so worth it, right?
Oh, it was so worth it.
Because then we're not just talking about sales. Then we're talking about well, as we started this, it's the values of the company. It's working with ideal clients. And there are so many benefits that come off that we won't go into. But I think anyone that's listening knows what it's like to work with an ideal client compared to working with a client that isn't a perfect fit for your business.
And what scares me about that and makes me sad, Samantha, is that there are probably people out there, whether they're consultants, coaches, or just employed salespeople, that have never stopped long enough to think about what would my ideal client look like, and force the issue in their own head to go to chase the ideal client, because it is a different world when you're working with ideal clients.
Oh, so different. So different. So much better. Yeah, we said at the beginning, let's have some fun. Fun is what comes up for me when I'm working with ideal clients. I have so much fun.
Oh, you get up every morning just so eager to go out to work. It's such a difference. Such a difference. Yeah.
100%. 100%. I want to talk about some of the blind spots that people have around sales. That is one of them. You've just mentioned not knowing that ideal client. What are some other blind spots that you can shine a light on for people so that if they're listening, they think, oh, I haven't thought about that before?
Sure. I tell you my favorite one. And this is, we're not going to talk that much about, well, we can talk a little bit about the prospect side, but let's talk about the individual seller or the consultant themselves. And this is, again, this is so amazing to me. So take the scenario where you're 3 years old and your mother and your father, they take you in tow and they got you by the hand. You're all dressed up. It's a Saturday. They walk into a car showroom because they need to buy a new car. All right. We need cars, right? And the salesperson comes over and does their bad salesperson routine. And salesperson walks away for a minute, and the mother looks at the father and says, I hate salespeople. Okay. Where did that message just go?
Straight into
Didn't
that little
say it to the
3-year-old.
child. Straight into the 3-year-old. 20 some odd years later now, because that message has been reinforced in society and television all over. That message has been reinforced. Okay. So 20 some odd years later, somebody says, oh, you want to sell? It's great, blah, blah, blah. The rational mind hears all of the reasons they should sell, and they say yes. And they go in to take the sales job. They go through training, product training, all the tricks and trades, blah, 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 whatever it is. And they go out to sell, and the subconscious goes, you can't sell, selling's bad. You can't sell, selling's bad. You can't sell, selling's bad. And they don't even hear it. They can't. And we all have to understand, we have been programmed since we have been in the womb. That's just a fact. I'm not making that up. That is a fact. We're not going to go back and change what happened, but we have to at least be able to admit what's there and see how we can mitigate it. That's one of the biggest. All right. But now you get into the buyer. Oh, all buyers buy on price. All buyers are idiots. All buyers want the best deal. All buyers want something on the side. They want to be bribed. All buyers don't know what they're talking. Whoa, where are you going? Where are you going? Salespeople are idiots. The sales managers that believe that. One of the major organizations came out with a stat. I think it was 2 years ago or so. So it's probably still relatively true. And again, you always have to take stats with a grain of salt. And their stat was along the lines of 88% of all sales managers have no idea what to say to their salespeople. That's scary.
A high percentage. Yeah, that's really high.
That's a high percentage. All right. So these are the kinds of blind spots. The blind spots are about what's up here. Okay. There's and whether you call them training or blind spots, again, the one we started with, that people don't buy products. They buy the belief that you can help them. You've got to understand that. Now, yes, is somebody going to go, oh yeah, I like pens. I like that pen. I buy that pen. Goodbye. Is that going to happen? Sure it is. Are you going to win deals way before you get through your whole presentation? Yeah, sometimes. Not always. There's work some of the stuff is amazing. There's work that's been done that talks about presentations or pitches as this individual talks about it. And I am firmly convinced that probably less than 1/10 of 1% of everybody selling knows how to pitch properly. And this individual has done extensive research, says, because the average pitch or presentation is about 45 minutes, at the same time as a regular class in colleges. He says the prospect loses interest. The brain shuts off after 22 minutes. And in most cases, by 22 minutes, most salespeople have only talked about why they're the best, what their product does, how it does it, and why they should buy, and has never even started the conversation about what does the client need. Wow, that's a wake up. So we have to be open. We have to be open to the fact that we know more, that the buyers are different. Start to study what's been going on in research. Accept it. Don't keep fighting everything. The world's changed.
A lot of people I know, and again, we're talking specifically about coaches here. So many coaches that I speak to say, I hate doing sales. And for me, when people say that, the first thing I say is, how do you feel when you get a perfect client and you make the sale? Like, it is the biggest rush of a good feeling when you've just signed up clients. So you don't really hate doing sales. What can you speak to that?
Most businesses, and when you think about somebody who's moving into consulting or into coaching, it applies not to every one of them, but it applies to a lot of them, are started on the notion that somebody has a solution that will help to solve a problem. And if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a solopreneur, if you're an inventor, if you fall into that area, most of those solutions tend to be of a technical nature. Let me explain how it works. Let me explain why it works. Let me explain the great blah, blah, all of this kind of stuff. And you get very excited about it. And you walk in and the prospect is sitting over here going, I've got a problem, I've got a problem, I've got a problem, I've got a problem. You walk in and go, bam, I got a great solution I want to tell you because you're excited about it. You have never given the prospect a chance to bond with you. You've never given them a chance to even attempt to trust you. You've never given them a chance to believe that they have been heard. And this goes back to the I'm selling a product versus I'm selling a solution. What I say to all of my clients in that space is stop and go talk to the person. Don't talk about the product. Talk about the problem. Understand the problem. It is amazing, and I challenge anybody to do this. It is amazing how many people just that we speak to in sales have parents that they're taking care of, have children that have disabilities, all right, that have gone through bad marriages, that have gone through bad childhoods, all right, that have just lost a loved one. And we don't even acknowledge the fact that this person might have something on their mind. And who do we talk to when we need answers in life? We talk to people we can trust. We talk to people that have bonded with us in some way. Go make a friend.
That was so valuable. We need to understand that we're talking with real people, with real lives happening just like in our lives. You know, we know that there's all this stuff going on in our lives, but it's happening for other people too. And don't come into that conversation with our agenda of what we want to sell, but come in with the agenda of really getting to know that person and genuinely finding out if we can help them, genuinely listening. Yeah. I love that so much. John, for people that have listened to this and they would like to stay connected or learn more about what you do, can you just share a little bit about, you know, how people can find you?
Yeah, I would suggest just go to my website, which is attitudeselling.com, attitudeselling.com. You will find description of what I do in the two areas that I do it. You will find ways to get in touch with me, whether it's Calendly, booking some kind of an appointment, send me a note. I accept carrier pigeons on alternate Tuesdays if you would like to do that too. I'm only kidding. Jeez.
Oh, I was so excited about that too.
I know. Oh boy. And I took my own learnings during COVID and said, trying to understand the single practitioner issues and challenges. And I put my thoughts down in a book, and it's on the website. It's called Winning the Inner Game of Sales. It's less than a 60-minute read. It is not going to win any literary prizes. Trust me, that was not the intent. It's to say, hey, here's a different way to look at things. Does it help? I don't know if it helps. Hopefully it does. Even if it doesn't, you're not out that much money. I'm only kidding.
I was thinking, what? I think winning the inner game of sales sounds like a great topic that we should all be diving into. John, what is one thing that you would love to leave today's listeners with in regards to this huge topic that we've talked about today?
Yeah, I've said it a few times, but I'll sum it up this way. Stop chasing the deal. Chase the trust of the person. Chase the problem. Stop chasing the deal. And understand, when I was in corporate, I was chasing somewhere in the range of $3.5 to $5 million a year as a quota. And it almost, one point, I'm not going to get into the story, but one point it almost actually and physically killed me because I was working too hard. And I had to come to a decision as I lay on the sofa and my boss is screaming at me because he needed my money to make his quarter. And I said, because I love selling technology. I love technology because I think it does such great things. But I said, what do I really care about in life? And I said, what I really care about in life is helping somebody win. And when I said, okay, I'm going to help people win, I actually took my quota and I pushed it out of my head. And I said, I'm just going to go help people win. My numbers went up 25%. I had the best time of my life. I continue to.
Mm.
I don't chase the money. Money shows up.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can do that, that's what I would suggest you try to refocus your brain on. And right now, I hate to say it, people in the world need other people who they can talk to. They need other people they can become friends with to a certain extent. I'm talking about buddy buddies.
Mm.
They need somebody who can help understand their problem. All right. We're in a bad shape right now. And you know what? As salespeople, we have the ability to help change that for one individual every time we talk to them.
I could not agree more. And I really feel that when we go out with a pure intention of helping people win, everyone is happy. And happy people are going to change the world. They really are. John, thank you so much for coming on the show and discussing sales. I actually love sales. People think I'm a mad person, but it is because I love the feeling when I help people win. So thanks for coming and chatting with me about this topic.
Thank you so much. It's been great. I really appreciate it.